You ever had that weird moment when something so small twists your whole perspective in a second? Yeah, that happened to me a couple months into living with Max, my new roommate. I knew Max was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but I never pegged him for anything strange. Until one lazy Sunday afternoon, I was rummaging through the recycling bin, don't ask why. I guess I was trying to find a misplaced receipt or something, and out slipped this ridiculously thick envelope from Max's side of the room. The kind of envelope you'd keep if you didn't want someone glancing at what's inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and, well, okay, I peeked. Inside were pages and pages of notes. Not just normal stuff, no, these were detailed sketches, lists, and careful observations about me. Like where I went every morning, the number of coffee cups I threw away, even a breakdown of my daily moods. I felt like I'd accidentally stumbled onto some secret dossier about myself. I tossed the envelope back, heart pounding, trying not to freak out. How much did Max really know about me? And more importantly, why was he keeping all this? I mean, how well can you actually know someone you're sharing an apartment with? It's easy to think you do, but this was different. Suddenly, every time Max was just reading or seeming quiet, it felt loaded with some hidden intent. But then again, maybe I was overthinking it. People keep odd journals, right? Maybe he was just some super organized type who liked documenting life in detail. Still, I couldn't shake off that uneasy feeling that crept under my skin. It was like I'd been looking at my roommate through a slightly wrong lens all along, and now the whole picture was skewed. I shrugged it off and tried to act normal when Max came home. He didn't mention the envelope or anything, or at least I hoped he didn't notice me peering at his things. He was his usual quiet self, dropping his bags by the door, muttering a simple, "Hey," before disappearing into his room. But in that moment, I couldn't stop wondering what else he was keeping hidden around here. Maybe this was just the start of something a little weird. Moving in with Max was supposed to be the financially sensible move. Rent prices in the city had turned my wallet into a sad creature, gasping for mercy every month. So yeah, when Max casually mentioned he was looking for a roommate, I jumped at the chance. I mean, he seemed normal enough, or at least normal in that quiet guy who isn't a serial killer kind of way. The first day I stepped into the apartment, I noticed how Max had meticulously arranged everything. Shoes perfectly lined up by the door, bookshelves staffed with random novels and weird gadgets that looked like they belonged in a mad scientist's lair. He greeted me with a nod rather than an enthusiastic, "Welcome," which felt fitting since he was low-key from the start. I guess that was Max's style, quiet, reserved, but oddly observant. Over the next few days, I started picking up on his little quirks, like Max never really ate in the living room. Plates disappeared as soon as he finished, always back to his room. He'd take these super long showers that sounded like a waterfall, but when he came out, his hair wasn't really wet, just damp around the edges. I joked once that he should run for office with all the suspicious campaign ads he was unintentionally giving off, but he just smiled faintly without saying much. One evening, Jess swung by to see the new place. Jess has this radar for bullshit, especially when it comes to roommates. I was excited, trying to showcase my ideal roommate situation, but Jess raised an eyebrow as soon as she stepped inside. "So," she started, folding her arms like a detective in one of those crime dramas she binges, "you actually trust this guy?" She gestured vaguely toward Max's door, which was closed but whose faint humming of some indie music leaked out. "Why wouldn't I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Max seems cool. Quiet, keeps to himself. It's good." Jess wasn't buying it. Quiet can mean a million things. You know this entire city is basically a magnet for people who act one way and hide a whole other, right? You're telling me your roommate hasn't given you a single weird vibe until now? I had to admit, before the envelope incident, I hadn't noticed anything truly alarming. But Jess's skepticism planted this tiny seed of doubt. "Well, yeah, he's a little different. Like those long showers are how he seems to know when I'm about to leave the apartment. But that's not exactly sketchy, right?" Jess shrugged. "Maybe not. But trust me on this, new roommates are like onions. You peel one layer and suddenly you're crying over things you didn't see coming." The idea stuck with me. Jess's words echoed every time I caught Max staring just a little too long at my laptop or when he would absent-mindedly rearrange the furniture in the living room but refuse to admit it later. Honestly, Max's behaviors were more like vague brushstrokes than a full portrait, but they were enough to make me sit up a bit straighter. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, I watched Max through the slightly cracked door. He was hunched over his desk, scribbling furiously in a notebook, fingers tapping out a pattern on the wooden surface. I tried to see what he was writing, but all I caught were a handful of words repeated over and over. Patterns, movements, timing. Come to think of it, Max's schedule was bizarrely consistent. In the mornings, he'd leave the apartment 30 minutes after me and show up just before I got back, like he was following my routine like clockwork. When I mentioned a party or a plan, he didn't ask questions or even seem interested, but weirdly, he'd pop up at the exact same place at the exact same time sometimes, like he was tracking me without really trying to. I tried to chalk it up to coincidence, or maybe Max just liked wandering the same parts of the city. But every quirky detail added up, piling in the back of my mind like a puzzle that I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. Still, life had its own rhythm. Max kept to himself, never borrowing my stuff or crashing social events, and I tried to stick to my own routine, convincing myself that Jess's warnings were just paranoia fueled by the city's chaotic roommate stories. Maybe Max was just an introverted weirdo with a passion for documenting life in strange ways. That was until another small thing happened. The landlord showed up, always at the worst times, like he had a sixth sense for intruding just as I was about to relax. He was this gruff, no-nonsense guy who clearly didn't trust anyone under 30 living in his building. Once, he popped in mid-dinner, complaining about some noise that couldn't have been us because Max and I were silence champions. The landlord's timing was uncanny, and Max didn't seem bothered at all by the landlord's sudden visits. In fact, he barely reacted, which was odd. Most people get at least a little annoyed when someone barges in without warning. But Max just nodded, politely but silently, and went back to whatever he was doing. Jess's suspicions felt less like something she cooked up on a bored night and more like a reality I was tiptoeing through. I started watching more, observing the subtle dance between Max's quiet mornings and silent afternoons, trying to catch any slip-up, any clue that would explain the strange little habits piling up. And still, Max's door remained closed more often than not, his secrets locked inside, like the thick envelope I had stumbled across earlier. The quiet, simmering mystery in the shared apartment was growing, and I couldn't tell if I was just seeing shadows on the wall or if Max really was something beyond the odd quirks and notebooks he hid away. So yeah, moving in with Max to save some cash was working out financially, but the roommate piece was feeling more like an uneasy truce. One where every glance and sound carried a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered just yet. I didn't think the night would turn into anything more than a weird footnote in my living with Max saga. But, well, here I am, telling you about how I caught Max lurking around my stuff in the dead of night like some kind of low-budget spy movie. So it was around 2 a.m., that ridiculously quiet hour where even the city sounds seemed to tiptoe. I'd woken up thirsty, grabbed my bottle of water, and was heading back to bed when I caught a glimpse of movement near my desk. At first, I thought it was the landlord popping in again. He did this random check thing sometimes, but no, it was Max. He was crouched by my desk, eyes flicking between the laptop and a drawer I keep locked. What was even odder was the way he moved, almost like he was trying not to wake the dead or worse, my alarm clock. I froze, heart thudding, trying to figure out if I should confront him or just watch. And then Max, in a move so quick he almost knocked his own head on the desk, closed the drawer and straightened up like nothing happened. Like I wasn't standing there, caught staring at him in the pitch-black hallway. What are you doing?" I muttered, unable to keep my voice steady. Max blinked slowly, gave me this almost blank look and said, "Nothing, just could not sleep." That unapologetic shrug sent a weird chill down my spine. Nothing, my foot? The next day, I checked the drawer Max had been snooping in. My wallet, a gift from my brother, not really something I lend around, was missing. And it wasn't the usual misplaced wallet panic either. I knew exactly where it had been the evening before. That was when the little unsettling incidents started multiplying. My headphones disappeared for a couple of hours and popped back on the floor near the couch like some very odd gift. A book I'd left on the coffee table vanished, only to reappear tucked behind Max's door, spine cracked open like someone had been leafing through it. And the noises, oh god, the noises. There were these soft thuds and shuffles that didn't quite sound like normal apartment life. Sometimes creaks would echo from Max's room even when I was sure he was out or asleep. Once I swore I heard muffled whispering which raised the maybe I'm going crazy stakes by a solid 100. At first I tried brushing it off. I mean, everyone's got quirks, right? Maybe Max just liked poking his nose into things. Or maybe he was juggling some secret hobby involving weird timing patterns and notebooks filled with sketches that resembled something out of a detective novel. But then came the moments when I tried to bring it up. I caught him in the living room eyeing my laptop suspiciously, so I went for it. "Max, seriously, what's up with you lurking around my stuff? I'm starting to feel like I'm living with a cat burglar." He just smiled, and I swear it wasn't a friendly smile. More like the smirk of a guy who's just been caught but is enjoying the moment too much. "You worry too much." That dodging didn't sit well with me. I tried again later, cocking my head and asking outright, "Why do you keep watching me? Not gonna lie, this is weird." Max shrugged, tapping his finger against his chin and said, "Patterns are interesting, people's patterns especially." Patterns? Come on. I wasn't sure if I was living with a socially awkward scientist or something else entirely. It was at my wit's end when I texted Jess, desperate for an ally. She showed up that evening armed with a notebook, of course, a flashlight, and the kind of smirk that said she was totally ready for some undercover ops. "All right," she announced, pacing the living room like she was about to take down a criminal mastermind. "Time to set a trap." Jess had me stash a small camera hidden in my desk lamp, hoping to catch Max in the act of whatever weirdness he was up to. We also agreed I'd keep a tight inventory of my stuff, labeling or photographing things like some paranoid investigator. The next few nights felt like living in my own suspense thriller, waiting for that moment when Max would slip up or reveal his true colors. And slip up he did, sort of. On night 3 of Operation Catch Max, the camera caught Max gently opening the drawer I'd noted missing the wallet from. He pulled out one of my old coffee mugs, my favorite, and set it by his door, staring at it for a long while. No stealing? Jess whispered, peering over my shoulder at the footage. I shrugged, equally baffled. Then, just as Max was about to close the drawer, he turned sharply, almost like he'd sensed the camera. Shit, I heard him mutter under his breath, then he grabbed the mug and disappeared back into his room. It wasn't thievery, clearly, but that mug? Why take it just to stare? And why the quick exit the moment he noticed the recording? The more I watched Max, the deeper the mystery grew, and the more I realized that living with someone until you know their story is like trying to read a book through a foggy window. It's there, but never quite clear. Jess kept poking me to confront Max once the evidence started to pile, or maybe just because she couldn't resist a good mystery. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out the truth or just keep living with the weird little clues Max left scattered across our shared space. But I did know one thing. Max was hiding something, and it wasn't just the usual roommate quirks. Whatever it was, the next step was mine. And so far, it didn't look like it was going to be simple. So, after a few nights of playing detective and watching Max's shadowy movements through the grainy glow of a hidden camera, I finally caught a break that flipped the whole script. Not with a dramatic confession or a secret stash of stolen goods, but with something so unexpectedly mundane, it almost made me laugh out loud in relief. It was late on that third night when I saw Max slip out of his room clutching a slightly crumpled piece of paper. He hesitated by the door, looked all around like a nervous performer before stepping softly into the living room. Then, it hit me. The paper was a schedule, a timetable, not just any schedule, but one broken down hour by hour, filled with scribbles about safe times to observe, minimal social overlap, and oddly enough, notes on the landlord's random visits. I squinted at my laptop screen, rewinding to catch every detail. Max wasn't sneaking around for nefarious reasons. He was, timing everything. His notes matched up with every odd behavior I'd noticed. The late-night lurking, the careful positioning near my desk, even the bizarre habit of taking my coffee mug only to stare at it like it was some kind of puzzle piece. The next morning, I decided to just ask. I knocked on Max's door, not the aggressive, accusation-laden kind. Just a plain old, let's talk, knock. Moments later, he opened the door, holding that same schedule in hand, eyes tired but steady. I'm glad you asked, he said quietly, stepping aside to let me in. Max's room was nothing like the spy den I'd imagined. It was tidy, a little sparse, almost clinical. The notebooks were there, yes, but so was a small whiteboard covered in diagrams and notes that looked more like therapy tools than secret plans. I've got social anxiety, Max explained, his voice calm without any hint of apology. The notes, all of it. It's how I manage living with someone. Like, breaking down patterns helps me predict and prepare so I don't get overwhelmed. It's not about spying or stealing. It's about feeling safe. That hit me harder than I expected. Here I was, caught up in a drama built on fear and guesswork, when really, Max was just trying to navigate his own challenges. He even showed me the coffee mug situation. Turns out it was a kind of comfort object. Having it close helped him feel grounded during moments of panic. We sat down for a long chat, a conversation packed with awkward pauses and shared laughs as I admitted how wild my imagination had run. Max didn't get defensive. Instead, he appreciated the chance to explain himself, and honestly, I felt a bit foolish for letting suspicion take root so deeply. Jess was right about peeling back layers, just not in the way I expected. Sometimes those layers aren't secrets or schemes, they're just parts of people trying to cope with the world in their own imperfect ways. And hey, living with Max taught me a few roommate life lessons I didn't see coming. 1. Keeping an open mind beats assumptions every single time. 2. Communication is oddly underrated, especially at 2 a.m. when you catch your roommate lurking near your stuff. 3. And maybe, just maybe, the weirdest habits have the emptiest coverage behind them. So yeah, Max is still kind of odd, but in the best, most human way possible. He's not the mysterious figure my paranoia imagined. He's just Max, navigating his space and his fears with quiet determination. As for me, I'm just glad the mystery didn't explode into some dramatic soap opera. Now, whenever I see those notebooks or catch him making a schedule, I smile quietly thinking, there goes my roommate, managing his patterns and maybe, just maybe, keeping me on my toes for the right reasons. And that, my friends, is the weird, wild world of living with Max, a guy who knew a lot, but not too much. Just enough to teach me that sometimes the biggest mysteries come wrapped in the smallest quirks, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what makes sharing a place, even with the oddest roommates, a little bit interesting?